He's mine. The words were a ghost of a whisper on my lips, lost in the sterile hum of the hospital room. But the man whose silver eyes were locked on the tiny, sleeping face in the incubator heard them. Kalen, the alpha of the Blackwood Pack, the billionaire whose empire spanned continents, the man I had run from 18 months ago, turned his gaze on me. The raw, untamed power that clung to him like a second skin crackled in the air, suffocating me. His jaw was granite, his fists clenched at his sides, and the look in his eyes, a maelstrom of shock, fury, and a pain so deep it mirrored my own, shattered the fragile peace I had built in my exile. He hadn't known. He hadn't known about Liam. And now, standing here, with our son fighting for every breath, the truth was a cataclysm that would either bond us forever or tear us apart for good. Wait, before the next revelation unfolds, if this mystery has already captivated you, let us know where you're following the story from. To ensure you don't miss unexpected claims, broken bonds, or awakenings under the moon, subscribe and stay close. Now, back to the scene. Yours? Kalen's voice was a low growl, a dangerous sound that vibrated through the floor and up my spine. He took a step closer, and every instinct screamed at me to shield my son, to place myself between this overwhelming force of nature and the most precious thing in my world. But I was frozen, pinned by the weight of his stare. You ran from me, Alara, vanished without a trace, and you dare to stand here now and claim this child is mine? The word hung in the air, heavy and sharp. It was an accusation, a condemnation. 18 months of sleepless nights, of scraping by, of loving Liam with a ferocity that was my only shield. It all culminated in this moment. My throat was tight, my hands trembling. I did what I had to do. I managed, my voice strained. To protect him? He laughed, a bitter, humorless sound that was more of a snarl. From me? His father? He gestured wildly around the neonatal intensive care unit, at the beeping machines and the quiet, desperate hope that filled the space. This is your protection? A sterile box and the constant threat of what, Ilara? What is wrong with him? The anger in his voice cracked on the last words, revealing the raw fear beneath. He was an alpha. He was used to control, to power, to bending the world to his will. Here, in this room, he was as helpless as I was, and the realization terrified him. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to find my voice. He was born early. His lungs, they aren't strong enough yet. The simple words felt like a betrayal, an admission of my own failure to keep him safe inside me, to carry him to term. Every beep of the heart monitor was a judgment. Kalen's gaze snapped back to the incubator, his features softening almost imperceptibly. He moved closer, his large frame dwarfing the delicate machinery. He placed a hand on the clear plastic, his long fingers splayed just above Liam's tiny, fragile chest. I saw the tremor in his hand, the raw vulnerability of a father seeing his child for the first time in a moment of crisis. The air shifted. The wolf within him, the primal, possessive beast that recognized its own blood, was stirring. I could feel it, a low thrum of energy in the room that was both terrifying and strangely reassuring. "He has my eyes," Kalen murmured, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't decipher. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was wonder, disbelief, and a dawning, terrible grief for the time he had lost. "He has your stubbornness, too," I said, a faint, watery smile touching my lips before I could stop it. "The nurses say he's a fighter." Kalen didn't look away from Liam. "Why, Ilara? Why did you run? Did you hate me so much that you would deny me my own son?" The question was a blade to the heart. Hate him? No, I had never hated him. I had loved him with a desperation that had nearly destroyed me. I had loved him enough to leave. It was never about hate, Kalen. Then what was it about? He demanded, finally turning to face me again. The confusion in his eyes was genuine. In his world of black and white, of power and submission, my actions made no sense. I thought we were... You thought I was a conquest, I finished for him, the old bitterness rising like bile. A distraction, someone to warm your bed until you found your fated mate, the one who would be your Luna and stand by your side. His face hardened again. That's not true. Isn't it? I challenged, finding a sliver of strength in my indignation. You said it yourself. You told me what we had was temporary, fun. You made it clear there was no future. What was I supposed to do, Kalen? Stay and watch you fall in love with someone else while I carried your child in secret? Be the Omega who sullied the great Alpha's bloodline with a baby born outside a fated bond? The truth of my words hit him. I saw it in the flicker of his eyelids, the tightening of his jaw. He remembered. He remembered the careless words, spoken in the afterglow of passion, words that had secured his freedom but had shattered my world. He had been so intent on protecting his own heart, on waiting for the mate the moon goddess had chosen for him, that he had never considered he might be creating his own destiny with the woman already in his arms. I was a fool, he said, the admission quiet but clear. I was young, arrogant. You were an alpha protecting his future, I corrected. I understood that. That's why I left. I didn't want to be a complication. I didn't want our son to be seen as a mistake. A mistake! His voice dropped to a lethal whisper. He is never a mistake. He looked back at Liam, and the fierce possessiveness in his gaze was unmistakable. The alpha had claimed his heir. He is my son, my blood, and you are his mother. He stepped away from the incubator and closed the distance between us. He was so close I could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell the familiar scent of pine and winter air that used to be my comfort. He reached out, his hand hesitating for a moment before his thumb gently brushed away a tear I hadn't even realized had fallen. His touch was electric, a spark that ignited 1,000 dormant memories. "You are coming home, Ilora," he said. It wasn't a request. It was a command, spoken with the full weight of his alpha authority. You and my son. You will live at the pack house. You will want for nothing. He will have the best care, the best protection. My heart hammered against my ribs. The pack house. The place I had fled. The place filled with wolves who would see me as an outcast, an Omega who had trapped their alpha. The place where his family, his counsel, and the whispers of his fated mate resided. It was the last place on earth I wanted to be. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. Kalen's eyes narrowed. "No. We can't. I can't." Panic clawed at me. "They'll hate me. They'll see Liam as a threat to your future Luna." "I am the Alpha," he stated, as if that explained everything. "My word is law, and my son is not a threat. He is the future of this pack." His gaze was intense, unwavering. "You will not deny me this, Ilora. You will not keep my son from me any longer. I have missed 18 months of his life. I will not miss another second." He was right. I knew he was. Looking at Liam, so small and fragile, I knew he needed more than I could give him. He needed the resources, the protection, the family that only Kalen could provide. But the thought of returning to that life, of facing the judgment and the politics, of seeing Kalen every day and pretending my heart didn't still ache for him, was a torment I wasn't sure I could survive. "What about your mate?" I asked, the question tasting like ash. "What happens when she arrives? Where do Liam and I fit then?" For the first time, a shadow of uncertainty crossed his face. It was the one variable he couldn't control, the one bond that could override even his alpha command. The fated mate bond was sacred, absolute. A true Luna would never accept a child born to another woman, an Omega no less. We would be a constant, painful reminder of a past she had no part in. "We will deal with that when the time comes," he said, his tone dismissive, but his eyes told a different story. He hadn't considered it, not really. "That's not good enough, Kaylin," I insisted, my voice gaining strength. "I won't subject my son to being cast aside. I won't let his heart be broken by a woman who sees him as an obstacle. I would rather raise him alone, with nothing, than see him suffer that." A muscle feathered in his cheek. He was being challenged, perhaps for the first time in a long time, and he didn't like it. But he was also a father, and my words, born of a mother's fierce love, struck a chord deep within him. "He will never be cast aside," Kaylin vowed, his voice raw with conviction. "I swear it on my life, on my honor as Alpha." He took my hands in his grip surprisingly gentle. "Come home, Elara, please. Let me be a father to our son." The plea in his voice was my undoing. Not the command, not the show of power, but the simple, desperate request of a man wanting to know his child. I looked from his earnest, conflicted face to the incubator where our son lay sleeping, oblivious to the storm raging around him. My tiny, perfect, fragile boy. He deserved a father. He deserved the world. And Kaylin, for all his faults, was willing to give him that. But what would it cost me? My peace? My heart? My freedom? The dilemma was a physical weight, pressing down on me, stealing the air from my lungs. Go with him and risk everything I had fought to protect, or stay and deny my son the birthright and the father he deserved. The beeping of the monitor seemed to grow louder, each pulse a tick of a clock counting down to a decision that would change all of our lives forever. The journey back to Blackwood territory was a blur of silent tension. Kaylin had arranged everything with an unnerving efficiency. A private medical transport for Liam, ensuring he was never without the best care, and a sleek black car for us. I sat as far from him as the plush leather seats would allow, my gaze fixed on the passing landscape, trying to build my walls back up, brick by painful brick. But his presence was overwhelming, a constant magnetic pull that I had to fight with every fiber of my being. The pack house was just as I remembered it, a sprawling, magnificent structure of stone and glass nestled deep within the ancient forest. It was a fortress, a symbol of Blackwood power and wealth. To me, it was a gilded cage. Kaylin's beta, Marcus, was waiting for us at the entrance. His eyes, usually warm and friendly, were guarded as they flickered from Kaylin to me. He said nothing, but the silent question was deafening. Kaylin ignored it, his focus entirely on the ambulance that had just pulled up. "Have the medical wing prepared," Kaylin ordered, his voice all alpha. "Dr. Alistair is to be on call 24/7. No one is to disturb them unless absolutely necessary." "And her?" Marcus asked, finally acknowledging me with a curt nod. "Elara will be staying in the adjoining suite," Kaylin said, his tone leaving no room for argument. He turned to me, his expression unreadable. "Stay here. I'll oversee Liam's transfer." I watched him go, his broad shoulders squared, a man completely in his element, taking charge. The moment he was gone, the carefully constructed dam of my composure began to crack. Marcus cleared his throat. "Elara," he said, his voice softer now, "it's good to see you." "Is it, Marcus?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "Or am I the ghost at the feast?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Things have been tense since you left. He's not been the same." I'm sure he got over it, I muttered, wrapping my arms around myself. He didn't, Marcus said simply. He threw himself into the business, into the pack. He became harder, colder. We all thought, we didn't know. About the child. He looked at me, his eyes full of a mixture of pity and respect. You were brave to do it alone. I wasn't brave, I whispered. I was terrified. I still am. The suite Kaylin had assigned me was luxurious, with a sitting room, a massive bedroom, and a balcony overlooking the moon-drenched forest. A connecting door, I noted with a sinking heart, led directly to the medical wing where Liam would be. Kaylin had tethered me to him, ensuring I could never be far from our son, or from him. For the next few days, we fell into a strange, unspoken routine. I spent every waking moment by Liam's side, watching his tiny chest rise and fall, whispering stories and promises to him through the thick plastic of the incubator. Kaylin was there too. He would appear at all hours, sometimes sitting in silence for an hour, just watching his son. Other times, he would try to talk to me. "He looks stronger today," he said one afternoon, his voice quiet. I nodded, not taking my eyes off Liam. "The doctor said his oxygen levels are improving." "That's good." A beat of silence. "Elara, we need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about," I said flatly. "You wanted your son. He's here. I'm here. That's all there is to it." "That is not all there is to it," he countered, his frustration palpable. "You are the mother of my son. You are living in my home. We are connected." I finally looked at him, my gaze cold. "We are connected by him," I said, gesturing to the incubator. Nothing more. The hurt that flashed in his eyes was so swift, I almost missed it. "Do you really believe that? After everything we shared?" "What we shared was a fantasy," I shot back, my voice rising. "A temporary arrangement. Your words, Kaylin, not mine. I've just learned to live with the reality of them." He flinched as if I'd slapped him. "I was wrong. I was an idiot. How many times do I have to say it?" "Saying it doesn't change anything," I cried, my control snapping. Tears welled in my eyes, hot and furious. "It doesn't erase the nights I spent alone and pregnant, terrified that someone would find out, that they would drag me back here to face your judgment. It doesn't change the fact that I had to give birth to my son in a sterile human hospital because I was too afraid to seek out a pack doctor. Don't you dare come to me now and talk about what we shared as if it makes any of this okay." The sound of my raised voice drew a nurse, who looked in with concern. I waved her away, turning my back on Kaylin, my shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I felt him move closer, felt the warmth of his body behind me. I expected him to touch me, to try and comfort me, but he didn't. "I can't change the past, Elara," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "But I can build a future, for him, and for you, if you'll let me." "I don't want your future," I choked out. "I just want my son to be healthy." He was silent for a long moment. "Then that is what we will focus on," he said finally, and when I looked back, he was gone. His retreat gave me space, but it also left an aching void. Part of me, the weak, foolish part that still loved him, had wanted him to fight, to break down my walls, to prove he had changed. But he had backed away, giving me what I said I wanted, and it felt like another kind of rejection. The push and pull between us continued, a silent, exhausting dance. He would bring me meals himself, tempting me with my favorite foods, his expression carefully neutral. He filled my suite with books and soft blankets, small, thoughtful gestures that felt like weapons against my resolve. He never pushed, never commanded. He was trying to woo me, to earn his way back into my life through quiet persistence, and it was infuriatingly effective. One evening, I found him in Liam's room, not just watching, but reading to him. He was holding a children's book, his deep, resonant voice a soft murmur as he read about dragons and brave knights. The sight was so unexpected, so tender, it made my heart ache. He looked up and saw me standing in the doorway. He didn't stop reading, he just patted the chair beside him. Hesitantly, I entered and sat down. We listened together, the sound of his voice weaving a spell in the quiet room. When he finished the story, he closed the book and looked at me. "My mother used to read that to me," he said softly. "I didn't know you were close," I said, surprised. He rarely spoke of his family. "We were," he said, a sad smile touching his lips. "She died when I was 16. She was the heart of this pack, the heart of this house." It was a glimpse into a part of him I had never seen, a vulnerability he kept hidden beneath layers of alpha authority. For a moment, he wasn't the billionaire, the powerful leader. He was just a man who missed his mother. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. "She would have loved him," he said, his gaze returning to Liam, "and she would have adored you." The words were a gentle caress, and I felt my defenses crumble a little more. We sat in comfortable silence, a fragile truce forming in the space between us. It felt dangerous. Hope was a dangerous thing. A week later, Dr. Alistair delivered the news we had been praying for. Liam was strong enough. He could be taken out of the incubator. He could come home. The nurses helped me lift him for the first time without the barrier of plastic between us. He was so light, so warm. I buried my face in his soft hair, inhaling the sweet, milky scent of him, tears of relief streaming down my face. When I looked up, Kalen was watching us, his eyes shining with unshed tears. He held out his arms. "May I?" My first instinct was to clutch Liam tighter, to keep him for myself. But seeing the raw longing on Kalen's face, I knew I couldn't. I carefully transferred our son into his father's arms. Kalen held him with a reverence that stole my breath. He was so large, his hands so powerful, yet he held our son as if he were the most delicate treasure in the world. Liam squirmed, his tiny fist connecting with Kalen's chin. A slow, wondrous smile spread across Kalen's face. It was the first genuine smile I had seen from him since my return, and it transformed him, chasing away the shadows and revealing the man I had fallen in love with. "Hello, little wolf," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm your father." In that moment, watching them together, the lines I had drawn so carefully in the sand began to blur. The alpha, the father, the man, they were all intertwined. And my heart, which I had guarded so fiercely, felt a painful, familiar flutter. The dilemma was no longer about safety versus risk. It was about the loneliness of my self-imposed exile versus the terrifying, beautiful possibility of a family. The pack was a simmering cauldron of gossip and speculation. Liam's presence had been officially announced, Kalen's son, his heir. But my role was left deliberately vague. I was simply the mother, a spectral figure confined to a wing of the pack house. I could feel the whispers following me whenever I dared to venture out for a breath of fresh air. The stares from pack members, the thinly veiled hostility. They saw me as an Omega interloper, the woman who had birthed the Alpha's heir, but was and would never be his Luna. Kalen, in his own way, tried to shield me. He issued a stern decree that I was to be treated with respect, but commands couldn't alter feelings. The tension was thickest with his council of elders, particularly with his aunt Genevieve, a formidable she-wolf who had helped raise him after his mother's death. She cornered me one afternoon in the library. She was elegant, her silver hair coiled perfectly, but her eyes were as sharp and cold as shards of ice. "You've put my nephew in an impossible position," she said, her voice low and cultured, but laced with steel. "I didn't ask to be brought here," I replied, my chin held high. "No," she conceded. "You simply ran away with his heir, depriving him of his son and this pack of its future. And now you return, expecting what? A place of honor?" "I expect nothing," I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts. "I am only here for my son." "Your son," she scoffed softly. "He is Kalen's son, a Blackwood, and a Blackwood Alpha needs a Luna, a true, fated mate, a she-wolf of strength and standing who can unite the pack and secure alliances, not an Omega of no notable lineage who brings with her scandal and complication." Her words were cruel, designed to wound, and they found their mark. Everything I had feared, everything I had run from, was laid bare in her cold, disdainful gaze. "Liam is his son, regardless of who his mother is," I whispered. "Indeed, and for the boy's sake, you should consider what is best for him. A life in the shadows? A constant reminder of his father's indiscretion? Or a clean break? Kalen is a responsible man. He would provide for you, set you up comfortably, far from here. You could live your life, and the boy could be raised as befits an Alpha's heir by his father and his future Luna." The suggestion was monstrous. She wanted me to give up my son, to disappear again, but this time to leave him behind? The blood drained from my face. "Never," I breathed, the word filled with a sudden feral rage I didn't know I possessed. "You will never take him from me." Genevieve's lips thinned into a semblance of a smile. "We shall see. An Alpha's duty is to his pack first, always." I fled from her, my heart pounding with a new, more potent fear. This wasn't just about whispers and stares anymore. This was a direct threat. I ran to Liam's room and found Kalen there, rocking him gently by the window. "What is it?" he asked immediately, seeing the panic on my face. "What's wrong?" "Your aunt," I stammered, the words tumbling out. She told me I should leave Liam here with you and your future Luna. She wants to take my son from me." Kalen's face darkened into a thunderous mask. He carefully placed a sleeping Liam in his crib before turning to face me. The power rolling off him was immense, a physical force that made the air tremble. "Where is she?" he growled. He found her in the main hall, and the confrontation was swift and brutal. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. His voice was a low, lethal current of pure alpha command that had every wolf within earshot lowering their heads in submission. "You will never speak to Ilara that way again," he ordered, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "You will never threaten her or my son. She is Liam's mother, and she has a place in this house for as long as she chooses to stay. Am I understood?" Genevieve, for all her pride, paled under the full force of his authority. "I was only thinking of the pack's stability, Kalen." "I am the Alpha," he bit out. "I decide what is best for this pack, and my son will be raised by his father and his mother. That is my final word on the matter." He turned and strode back to me, taking my arm and leading me away from the stunned silence of the hall. His public defense of me should have been a comfort, but it felt like he had just painted an even larger target on my back. He hadn't claimed me as his mate. He had claimed me as the mother of his son, a subtle but significant distinction. I was a ward, a protected asset, not a partner. The fracture between us deepened, not with anger this time, but with a profound, aching sadness. We were living together, raising a child together, but we were more distant than ever. He was the alpha, and I was the omega he was honor-bound to protect. The fragile truce we had found in the hospital was shattered by the harsh realities of pack politics. The breaking point came a few weeks later. There was a formal dinner with the alphas of several neighboring packs. It was an important political event, and Kalen's Luna would have traditionally been at his side. Her absence was a glaring issue. Kalen asked me to attend, not as his date, but as a guest. He wanted to present a united front, to show the other packs that his son and the boy's mother were under his protection. I was hesitant, but I agreed for Liam's sake. I wore a simple, elegant dress, a far cry from the worn-out clothes I had lived in for the past year and a half. As I entered the dining hall on Marcus's arm, a hush fell over the room. I saw Kalen at the head of the table, looking impossibly handsome in a tailored suit. His eyes met mine, and for a fleeting moment I saw a flicker of pride, of longing, but it was quickly masked. The dinner was an ordeal. I was polite. I answered the carefully worded questions, but I felt like an exhibit on display. The true blow came when Alpha Ronan, a grizzled old wolf with a reputation for being blunt, turned to Kalen. "A fine-looking boy you have, Kalen," he said, nodding towards the nursery wing. "Strong bloodline, but a bloodline needs a matriarch. Any news from the moon goddess on your fated one? The pack needs a Luna." The entire table went silent, all eyes on Kalen. This was the question that had been hanging over all of us. I held my breath, my hands clenched in my lap. Kalen's expression was unreadable. He took a sip of wine before answering, his voice calm and measured. "The moon goddess works in her own time." The pack has an heir. For now, that is enough. It was a political answer, a deflection. But for me, it was a confirmation of everything I feared. He was still waiting, still holding out for a woman who wasn't me. He was telling the entire world that my position was temporary, that I was a placeholder until the real Luna arrived. The pain was so sharp, so sudden, it felt like a physical blow. I couldn't breathe. I pushed my chair back, murmuring a quiet excuse, and fled the room. I didn't stop until I reached the balcony of my suite, the cold night air a shock to my heated skin. The sound of the door opening behind me made me stiffen. "Ilara." It was Kalen. "Don't," I said, my voice choked. "Just don't." What he said in there? It wasn't what he said, Kalen. It was what you said, or rather, what you didn't say. I turned to face him, the moonlight catching the tears on my cheeks. For now, that is enough. Do you have any idea how that felt? To be sitting there, to have everyone know that I am just a temporary fixture in your life? That my son and I are just enough for now? "That's not what I meant," he said, taking a step towards me. "It was politics, diplomacy." "It was the truth," I cried, my heart breaking with every word. "You are still waiting for her, the perfect, fated Luna who will complete your perfect alpha life. And when she comes, what happens to us, Kalen? What happens to your son when your mate decides she doesn't want another woman's child?" "I told you that will never happen," he insisted, his voice rising in frustration. "How can you know that? The mate bond is stronger than anything. It can make alphas do irrational things. It can make them forget oaths and promises. I will not have my son's heart broken. I told you that from the very beginning." "So what do you want from me, Ilara?" he demanded, his control finally snapping. "What do you want me to say? That I renounce a bond blessed by the goddess herself? That I should turn my back on my destiny for a woman who didn't even trust me enough to tell me I had a son?" The accusation struck me to the core, a venomous, unfair blow. All the regret, all the sacrifice, all the love I had poured into our child on my own, he threw it back in my face as a lack of trust. I did it to protect him from the very situation we are in right now, I retorted, my voice raw. From the politics, from the judgment, from the heartbreak of knowing his father was waiting for someone else. I left because I loved you, you fool! I loved you so much I couldn't bear to watch you fall in love with your mate. I wanted to spare us all that pain. But I was wrong. There is no escaping it. The confession hung in the air between us, raw and bleeding. I loved you. Past tense, a lie, but a necessary one. He stared at me, his face a mask of shock and pain. The fury drained out of him, replaced by a devastating understanding. He finally saw it all, the selfless, heartbreaking reason for my flight. Ilara, he whispered, his voice cracking. I didn't know. No, I said, a bitter calm settling over me. You didn't. I straightened my shoulders, my decision made in that moment of shared agony. Genevieve was right. This isn't working. I can't live like this, and I won't raise Liam like this. What are you saying? He asked, dread creeping into his voice. I'm saying I'm leaving, I said, the words tasting like poison. And this time I'm not taking him with me. You're his father. He's your heir. He deserves to be raised as a Blackwood. He should have the life I can't give him, but I can't be a part of it. I can't stay here and watch my own heart be ripped out day by day. You can tell him I died. You can tell him whatever you want, but I can't stay. It was the ultimate sacrifice. The thought of leaving my son, my Liam, was an agony beyond comprehension. A wound from which I knew I would never recover. But the thought of him growing up in the shadow of a fated bond that excluded his own mother was 1,000 times worse. I would break my own heart to spare his. Kalen looked at me as if I had physically stabbed him. The blood drained from his face, leaving him pale and shaken. For the first time, the powerful alpha billionaire looked utterly broken. The secret was out, the fractures had split wide open, and the chasm between us seemed impossibly, irrevocably vast. My words left him speechless. Kalen stared at me, the alpha facade stripped away to reveal a man blindsided by grief. The idea of me leaving was one thing. The idea of me leaving our son behind was a concept so alien to his possessive, paternal nature that it shattered his composure. No, he finally choked out, the word a raw plea. You can't. Ilara, you cannot leave him. He needs you. I need you. The confession was torn from him, a desperate, unplanned admission that hung in the cold night air. It was the one thing that could have stopped me in my tracks. You need a Luna, I whispered, my voice hollow. You need your fated mate. That isn't me. Isn't it? He challenged, his voice regaining a fraction of its strength. He surged forward, grabbing my shoulders, his grip firm but not painful. His silver eyes bored into mine, searching, demanding. What if the moon goddess isn't some distant deity who hands out perfect partners? What if she just puts people in each other's paths and lets them forge their own destiny? What if our destiny was created that night, Ilara? What if Liam, what if he is our bond? It was a beautiful, desperate thought, a fantasy I had allowed myself in my loneliest moments, but it wasn't the way our world worked. The fated bond was a legend, a promise, the bedrock of pack society. That's not how it works, I said, shaking my head, even as my heart clamored for his words to be true. How do you know? He pressed. You ran before we could find out. You made a decision for both of us. Maybe you were wrong. He pulled me closer, his forehead resting against mine. "Don't go," he murmured, his breath warm against my skin. "Stay, fight with me. Let us be a family. Let me prove to you that you and Liam are all I want, that there is no one else." His words were a potent balm on my fractured soul, but the fear, ingrained over months of solitude and hardship, was a formidable barrier. Before I could answer, a frantic pounding on the suite door shattered the moment. It was Marcus, his face pale with alarm. "Kalen, there's been an attack. Rogues. They breached the southern perimeter. They're heading for the house." Kalen was instantly the alpha again. He released me, his body thrumming with contained violence. "How many?" "Dozens, more than a patrol can handle. And they're not just any rogues. They bear the mark of the Crimson Claw." A cold dread washed over me. The Crimson Claw were a brutal, notorious group of shifter mercenaries, known for their savagery. They didn't just attack, they annihilated. "Why?" Kalen demanded. "We have no quarrel with them." "I don't know," Marcus said, his eyes darting nervously towards me. "But their scouts were seen near the human town you just came from. They might have followed you." The implication was clear. They had followed me. They had sensed the presence of an unprotected Omega and her child. Or worse, someone had hired them. Someone who wanted me, and by extension, Liam, gone. Genevieve's cold words echoed in my mind. "Liam," I breathed, spinning around and running for his room. Kalen was right behind me. He swept our sleeping son from his crib, wrapping him in a blanket. Liam murmured but didn't wake, secure in his father's arms. "Get them to the safe room," Kalen ordered Marcus. "Now, no one gets through." He turned to me, his eyes blazing with a fierce, protective fire. "I will not let them touch you. Either of you. I swear it." He leaned in and pressed a hard, desperate kiss to my lips. It wasn't romantic. It was a promise. A brand. "Go." Marcus hurried me down a hidden corridor behind a bookcase. The sounds of fighting were already erupting from downstairs. Snarls, crashes, the sickening sound of breaking bones. We reached a heavy steel door, and Marcus shoved me inside, his hand on my shoulder. "Stay here, Alara. He'll come for you." He gave me a last grim look before sealing the door, leaving me in the silent, reinforced room with only a small cot and a supply of water. The minutes stretched into an eternity. I paced the small space, my mind a whirlwind of terror. Kalen was out there, fighting for us, for his pack. He was fighting an enemy that had come here because of me. The guilt was a physical sickness. If anything happened to him. The silence was finally broken by a low scraping sound at the door. I backed away, my heart in my throat. It wasn't the smooth unlocking of a keypad. It was something else. The door groaned, then buckled inward with a deafening crash. A massive rogue, his eyes burning with malice and his muzzle stained with blood, stood in the doorway. He grinned, a predator who had found his prey. "The Alpha's Omega," he snarled. "And here I thought this would be difficult." I screamed, scrambling backward until my back hit the cold steel wall. He stalked toward me, savoring my fear. I was defenseless, an Omega against a battle-hardened warrior. This was the end. I closed my eyes, a silent prayer for my son on my lips. A blur of motion and a roar of pure, untamed rage filled the room. Kalen was there. He hadn't come through the door. He had smashed through the reinforced wall from the adjoining corridor, his body a whirlwind of controlled destruction. He was no longer the billionaire in a suit. He was a prime alpha in his element, his eyes glowing with the light of his wolf, his hands tipped with claws. He slammed into the rogue, the impact shaking the entire room. The fight was brutal, primal, and terrifyingly fast. Kalen moved with a grace and savagery that was breathtaking. He was larger, stronger, and fueled by a righteous fury that the mercenary could not match. It was over in seconds. The rogue lay broken on the floor, and Kalen stood over him, his chest heaving, his body splattered with the blood of his enemies. He turned to me, his glowing eyes scanning me for injuries. He crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled me into his arms, crushing me against his chest. I buried my face in his neck, sobbing with relief and terror. "It's over," he murmured into my hair, his voice a low growl. "You're safe." He held me for a long moment before pulling back, his hands framing my face. "He was sent for you. Someone inside this pack hired the Crimson Claw to eliminate you and frame it as a random rogue attack." My blood ran cold. "Genevieve." He nodded, his jaw tight. She confessed. She thought she was protecting the pack's future, protecting me. He shook his head, a look of profound disgust on his face. "She has been exiled. She is no longer Blackwood." The swiftness of his justice was stunning. He had chosen me. He had chosen us over his own blood, over the traditions she claimed to be protecting. It was the ultimate act of redemption, a sacrifice of his past for the sake of our future. "Kalen," I started, but he cut me off. "There is no fated mate, Elara," he said, his voice raw with a conviction that left no room for doubt. "There is only you. There has only ever been you. I was a blind, arrogant fool, clinging to old prophecies because I was too scared to admit the truth, too scared to see the gift the goddess had already given me." He dropped to one knee before me, the powerful alpha kneeling in submission, not of a leader to his pack, but of a man to his heart. He took my hand, his gaze unwavering. "You are the heart of this pack, Elara. You and Liam. You are my home. My destiny was never written in the stars. It was born in my heart the day I met you, and sealed the moment our son was created. Be my mate. Be my Luna. Build this life with me, please." Tears streamed down my face, but they were not tears of sorrow or fear. They were tears of overwhelming, impossible joy. The walls I had built around my heart didn't just crumble. They were obliterated, washed away by the sheer force of his love and devotion. In the midst of chaos and bloodshed, he had made his final claim. He hadn't just chosen me over a hypothetical mate. He had chosen me over his family, his tradition, and his own pride. He had chosen to forge his own fate with me at his side. "Yes," I whispered, the word a promise, a vow, a homecoming. "Yes, Kalen, always, yes." He surged to his feet and lifted me into his arms, his mouth finding mine in a kiss that was both a desperate reclaiming and a gentle beginning. The battle outside was over, but the real victory was here, in this small, broken room, where a fractured family had finally, irrevocably, become whole. The months that followed were a whirlwind of healing and rebuilding. Kalen formally presented me to the pack, not as Liam's mother, but as his chosen mate, his Luna. He did so without fanfare or elaborate ceremony, but with a quiet, unshakable authority that left no room for dissent. He stood before them, with me at his side and our son in his arms, and simply declared that we were his family, the heart of the pack. His word was law, but it was the genuine love and devotion shining in his eyes that truly won them over. The pack, who had loved his mother and missed her steadying presence, saw a reflection of her strength and heart in the fierce, protective love I held for my son and in the way their alpha looked at me as if I were the moon itself. Our life found a new rhythm, a soft, peaceful cadence that I had never dared to dream of. The sprawling pack house, once a gilded cage, transformed into a home. Laughter echoed in the halls, a sound that had been absent for too long. Liam thrived, growing from a fragile infant into a chubby, happy toddler with his father's silver eyes and my determined spirit. He was the undisputed center of our universe, doted on by his father, cherished by his mother, and adored by a pack that saw him as a symbol of a new beginning. Kalen changed. The hard, cold edges that had formed in my absence melted away, replaced by a warmth and tenderness he reserved only for us. He was still a powerful, decisive alpha to his pack, but at home he was simply Kalen, a father who got down on the floor to build block towers, and a mate who would pull me into his arms in the middle of a busy day just to hold me. He never stopped trying to make up for the time he had lost, for the pain his past foolishness had caused. He filled our days with small kindnesses and quiet moments of connection that meant more than any grand gesture. One cool autumn evening, we sat on our balcony, wrapped in a thick blanket, watching the harvest moon rise over the canopy of the forest. Liam was asleep inside, his soft breaths a gentle reminder of the miracle we had created. Kalen's arm was warm and solid around me, my head resting on his shoulder. We didn't speak for a long time, content in the shared silence. "Are you happy, Ilara?" he asked softly, his voice a low rumble against my ear. I smiled, a genuine, soul-deep smile. I thought of the fear and loneliness that had been my constant companions for so long, and then I looked at the life that now surrounded me, a life filled with love, safety, and a sense of belonging I had never known. "More than I ever thought possible," I whispered, tilting my head up to kiss him. I was so afraid of the future, of the unknown, but I was wrong. Our destiny wasn't something to be afraid of, it was just waiting for us to be brave enough to claim it. He tightened his hold on me, his gaze fixed on the moon, which bathed the world in a soft, silver light. "He's our bond," Kalen murmured, his voice thick with emotion. I was waiting for a sign from the goddess, and she gave me one. I just didn't see it. He was the sign. He was the bond all along. I nestled closer, my heart overflowing. He was right. Our love story wasn't a traditional one. It hadn't been fated by a distant goddess, but forged in secret and revealed through struggle. It was a love born of a shared child, tested by fear, and finally claimed through sacrifice and redemption. It was ours, messy and imperfect, and stronger than any prophecy. Kalen turned my face to his silver eyes glowing in the moonlight, reflecting a love so profound it took my breath away. He didn't need to say the words. I could see them, feel them in his touch, in the very air between us. In the quiet of the night, surrounded by the sleeping forest and watched over by the patient moon, we had found our new normal.